Welcome horror fans to our channel. Today we're taking a trip down memory lane to examine one of the most underrated horror remakes of all time, 13 Ghosts. This film, produced by Dark Castle in 2001, may not have received much recognition upon its release, but over the years it has gained a cult following thanks to its iconic collection of haunted spirits and impressive production design. Join us as we dive into the history of Dark Castle, the film's production and why it's worth a watch for any horror movie lover. Without further ado, let's begin. The movie starts with the ghost hunter Cyrus Kritikos and his team set out to capture the deadly juggernaut spirit in a junkyard. But the mission ends in tragedy when Cyrus is killed in the process. Arthur, Cyrus's embittered and financially struggling nephew, inherits his uncle's mansion. Along with his family, Arthur moves into the mansion, only to find that it's haunted by 12 spirits. They're held captive by spells written on the glass walls, but when a lawyer takes money from the house, he unknowingly releases the spirits. Arthur, his kids and their babysitter must navigate the shifting walls and invisible spirits to find a way out of the haunted mansion. They're aided by a spirit liberator, Kalina, who reveals that the house is actually a complex machine built by Cyrus to open the eye of hell. The only way to stop the machine and save his children is for Arthur to sacrifice himself as the 13th ghost. To understand what the 13 ghosts are and what their purpose is, first we need to know what the Black Zodiac is. The Black Zodiac is a mysterious and dark force in the world of 13 ghosts. It is an inversion of the traditional zodiac, with each of its 12 signs representing a powerful earthbound ghost. These ghosts are necessary to gain access to the Ocularis Infernum, a powerful and mysterious portal that grants the user unfathomable power. Each of the 12 signs of the Black Zodiac corresponds to a specific ghost, each with their own unique abilities and powers, and the 13th ghost, the Broken Heart, is the final ingredient in the spell to fully activate Basilius's machine. This spirit is unique in that it was sacrificed willingly out of pure love, rather than through misery. The purpose of the ghosts is to fuel the Basilius's machine, which was designed by the devil and powered by the dead. It is a powerful and mysterious machine that resembles a two-story mansion, with walls made of ectobar glass etched with Latin containment spells. At the heart of the house is a central core of huge, mechanical gears and a rotating crest of rings. Once activated, it will open the Ocularis Infernum, granting the user immense power. The Black Zodiac is a dark and enigmatic force, shrouded in mystery and intrigue. It is a powerful tool for those who seek to harness its power, but also a dangerous one, as those who attempt to activate the machine without the proper knowledge and preparation may be consumed by its power. Now, let's talk about the ghosts themselves. The firstborn son. The firstborn son is the ghost of Billy Michaels and the first ghost to appear in the Black Zodiac. As a child, Billy was fascinated by old Western movies and wouldn't let anyone keep him away from them. One day, a neighbor challenged Billy to a duel, in which Billy used a toy gun. However, his toy gun was no match for the true steel-tipped arrow that his neighbor used, and he died when his neighbor shot him in the back of the head. After his death, Billy's spirit remained tied to the earth and was captured by Cyrus Kritikos to become the firstborn son. Billy's spirit was transferred to the basement of the Basilius machine with the other 11 ghosts. Ben Moss encounters the firstborn son in his containment cube in the basement. The firstborn son is the 6th ghost to be freed. Several times, the firstborn son appears to people trapped in the house, scaring them and leading them into the claws of the more dangerous ghosts. The torso. To understand the ghost of Jimmy Gambino and his role in the Black Zodiac, we first need to know his story. Jimmy Gambino was obsessed with gambling and spent his time at horse races instead of school, and his nights betting in seedy bars. He eventually opened his own betting business, but struggled to make payments due to his compulsive gambling and quickly developed a reputation for never refusing a bet. His inability to say no to a bet caught the attention of the mobster Larry Vadillo, who made a large bet on a boxing match. Jimmy agreed and sealed his fate. When Jimmy's fighter lost, he was unable to pay and was killed by Vadillo and his gang, who cut his body into pieces and wrapped them in plastic before throwing them into the ocean. After his death, Jimmy's spirit remained earthbound and was captured by Cyrus Kritikos to become the torso, one of the 13 ghosts in the Black Zodiac. He was then moved to the basement of Basilius's machine with the other 11 ghosts. As his title suggests, Jimmy is a torso without legs, wrapped in plastic and crawling with his hands, with his head cut off a few inches in front of him, screaming in agony forever. Jimmy is only seen once before the climax of the movie, when he scares Arthur Kritikos's son, Bobby, in the basement of Basilius's machine. After Cyrus is killed, Jimmy's spirit and all the others are freed from captivity and finally cross over to the afterlife. The Bound Woman. The third ghost in the Black Zodiac is the Bound Woman, a spirit of a woman who met her untimely demise due to actions that ultimately sealed her own fate. Cyrus chose the ghost of Susan Legros to embody this spirit. Susan was the daughter of the wealthiest couple in her town, making her the most popular girl in high school. She was also a cheerleader, possibly even the leader, but her defining trait was her infidelity. She seduced many men and left them without remorse, despite her friends warning her that she would one day regret her actions. At her high school graduation dance, she was dating the football team captain, Chet Walters, but once again cheated on him with another guy. This time, Chet had his revenge. The next day, the other guy was found beaten to death and Susan had disappeared. Later, she was found buried under the 50-yard line of the local football field, tied up with ropes and strangled to death. Even in death, Susan remains in her graduation dress and crown, with her arms tied behind her back. Her body hangs suspended by the belt used to strangle her and bears many marks of strangulation on her neck. Despite being dead, she still laughs in a sadistic and insane manner. The Withered Lover. Jean was the loving wife of Arthur Kritikos and the mother of their children, Bobby and Kathy Kritikos. Jean deeply loved her family, but tragically lost them one night when, while she and Arthur were sleeping in front of the fireplace, a burning log rolled and set fire to the Christmas tree, quickly starting a fire in the house. Arthur accidentally left Jean behind in his rush to save Bobby and Kathy, assuming incorrectly that Jean would come out and wait for them, but the left side of her face and body was horribly burned in the fire. The burned Jean was taken to St. Luke's Hospital, where she died from her burns. 6 months after her death, Jean's spirit remained bound to the earth and was captured by Cyrus Kritikos to become the Withered Lover. She was then transferred to the basement of Basilius' machine along with the other 11 ghosts and was the third ghost to be freed. Despite having been burned alive, Jean was likely the only ghost of the 12 captured that was purely innocent and kind, as she was not prone to aggression or causing any kind of harm to the living or dead. Just after her release, Jean tries to warn her son, Bobby, not to follow the woman tied up in the basement, but fails. Later, Jean communicates with Bobby through his toy microphone, telling him to put on a pair of spectral goggles to see her and begging him to come back upstairs. However, while Bobby is surprised and scared to see his dead mother, Cyrus attacks him from behind and kidnaps him. Later, a Latin chant causes Jean, along with the other 11 ghosts, to go to the center of the machine and turn it on. However, Jean is able to resist the spell long enough to visit her husband. When Jean and the other ghosts are freed from Cyrus' trance, she is one of the few, along with the firstborn, the torso, and the dire mother, that does not participate in the ghosts' revenge against Cyrus for capturing them. This is particularly interesting considering how Cyrus had put her family in extreme danger. This may be due to her not being a vengeful spirit. The Torn Prince. The Torn Prince is the ghost of Royce Clayton and the fifth ghost to appear in the Black Zodiac. Royce was born in 1940 and it was discovered that he was a talented baseball player in high school, despite his attitude problems and superiority complex. As a player destined to be a star, he was offered first-class scholarships from various universities, all offering him the best opportunity to leave his small-town life behind. However, fate dealt him a curveball when, at 17, Johnny, one of his rivals, challenged him to a race, but unbeknownst to Royce, Johnny had tampered with the brakes on his car before the event. This, of course, caused Royce to lose control of the car, resulting in a crash that tore a large amount of flesh from his chest as well as the right side of his face. This incident quickly ended Royce's life. Royce's body was buried in a plot of land overlooking the local baseball field where he played. After Royce's death, his spirit remained tied to Earth and was later captured by Cyrus Kritikos to become the Torn Prince. Later, the Torn Prince was transferred to the basement of the Basilius machine with the other 11 ghosts. As a ghost, Royce still carried his wooden baseball bat and attacked almost anyone who came near him. Dennis Rafkin and Ben Moss encountered the Torn Prince in its containment cube in the basement, with the Torn Prince terrifying Dennis. Later, when the walls of the house shift, Dennis becomes trapped with the prince in its containment cube, until, with Maggie's help, he dodges the prince's attacks and escapes the containment cube through a closing opening. When Arthur and Dennis try to make their way through the house to the basement, the Torn Prince is the 11th ghost to be released and brutally attacks the two, but they use a separate wall as a shield against its attacks. However, when the Torn Prince doesn't give up, the two use the panel to ram it against another wall, defeating the ghost. The Angry Princess. The Angry Princess is the ghost of Dana Newman and the 6th ghost to appear in the Black Zodiac. Dana Newman was incredibly beautiful in life. According to Cyrus, she had the natural appearance of a goddess, but she couldn't recognize her own beauty. Her self-loathing and low self-esteem, which doctors tried to save her from, were only fueled by a series of abusive boyfriends, leading her to have breast implants, nose jobs, and other unnecessary surgeries. One night, while Dana was alone in a clinic where she worked, she attempted to perform surgery on herself due to an imaginary imperfection on her face, but the unorthodox procedure went horribly wrong and left her blind in one eye. She then gave up on beauty and committed suicide by cutting herself with a butcher knife until she bled to death. When her body was discovered, her loved ones described her as just as beautiful in death as she was in life. After her death, Dana's spirit remained bound to the earth and filled with hate towards people. She was soon captured by Cyrus Kritikos to become the Angry Princess. The Angry Princess was transferred to the basement of the Basilius machine along with the other 11 ghosts. Ben Moss encountered the Angry Princess in her containment cube while in the basement. He made a comment about her body, which visibly enraged her, and she attempted to attack him unsuccessfully. Soon after, when Moss accidentally activates the machine, the Angry Princess is the first ghost to be released. She advances menacingly towards Moss for mocking her before, and then watches as he is cut in half between two sliding glass doors. The Angry Princess exits the basement and goes upstairs to the bathroom. There, she observes Kathy, who is looking at herself in the mirror with vanity, ignoring the princess. She then heads to the bathtub where she almost kills Kathy, but Kathy leaves the bathroom before the princess can attack her when Arthur arrives asking for Bobby. Later, when Dennis and Maggie get lost in the basement, the Angry Princess attacks Maggie, but she dodges effectively thanks to Dennis. The Pilgrimus. The Pilgrimus is the ghost of Isabella Smith, and the 7th ghost to appear in the Black Zodiac. During the colonial era around 1600, Isabella Smith navigated across the Atlantic Ocean to a New England city in search of a better life, but the people of the community didn't trust outsiders, and Isabella isolated herself from the rest of the city's population. When the town's cattle started dying mysteriously shortly after her arrival, Isabella was accused of witchcraft by the local preacher. She denied the claim, but when the preacher fell ill, the town quickly turned against her and cornered her in a barn. They set the structure on fire, but Isabella emerged, completely unscathed. Instead of a quick death, Isabella was sentenced to a slow and painful death, where children stoned her, women cursed her, and men spit on her until she finally died of starvation weeks later. After her death, Isabella's spirit remained bound to the earth, and her spirit was later captured by Cyrus Kritikos to become the Pilgrimus. She was then moved to the basement of the Basilius machine with the other 11 ghosts that represent the Black Zodiac. Dennis finally encountered the Pilgrimus in her containment cube in the basement, becoming the 7th or 9th ghost to be freed. The Pilgrimus eventually chases Arthur, Dennis, Kalina and Maggie through the house, being briefly caught by one of the basement's moving glass frames, but the four can reach the house's library and seal the interior before the pilgrimus can follow them inside. The Great Child and the Dire Mother. The Dire Mother is the ghost of Margaret Shelbourne, a shy woman who could never defend herself, partly because she was only 3 feet tall from childhood. People constantly looked down on her because of her ridiculously small size, and her own mother sometimes dressed her up like a doll, but Margaret didn't care as long as she found some twisted form of acceptance. A carnival barker named Jimbo put her on display in his freak show. Margaret found this life terrible, and one night, while sweeping the donkey stable, she was abused by another carnival freak, the Tall Man. Her son, Harold, who later became the Great Child, was born as a result of this abuse and eventually weighed over 136 kilograms. From childhood, Margaret continued to spoil Harold and never stopped as he grew up. Because of this, he remained in diapers his entire life and suffered a mental disability, leaving him as a small child, and never overcoming that stage of his life. As the circus workers mocked and tormented them endlessly, the two became very close and protective of each other. One night, some circus workers decided to play a cruel joke on Harold by kidnapping his mother. Enraged and furious, he set out to find his mother, destroying the circus, but when he found her, she had died of suffocation in the bag in which she was held. Filled with rage, Harold violently cut up all the circus workers with an axe, and displayed their remains for paying customers to see. Later, when Jimbo found out what Harold had done, he ordered an angry mob to tear Harold apart. Their ghosts are always together, and the Great Child still holds the axe with which he killed the circus workers. In the movie, they are not shown as aggressive spirits, just a little menacing, with Harold making baby noises, but never chasing the protagonists unlike most ghosts, and in the climax, Dire Mother does not participate in throwing the evil murderer Uncle Cyrus to his death. However, in the original script their deaths were different. The director explains that their original deaths were that Harold choked on his own vomit and as a result fell on his mother, suffocating her as well. It wasn't until later that this idea was discarded because the directors felt it was too weak a story for the characters. However, it is this part of the story that explains why Harold has vomit all over his bib and why his mother is feeding him in his cell. The Hammer. The Hammer is the ghost of George Markley and the 10th ghost that appears in the Black Zodiac. George Markley was an honest and hard-working blacksmith, until a man named Nathan falsely accused him of theft and threatened to expel him from the city where they lived. Knowing he was innocent, George confronted Nathan and refused to move, which led Nathan and his gang to brutally murder George's wife and children. Enraged, George tracked down Nathan and his friends and brutally beat them to death with his hammer. When the town discovered what George had done, they dragged him back to his shop, where they tied him to a tree and impaled him with railroad spikes using his own hammer, slowly killing him. As a final touch, they cut off George's hand and placed the hammer in its place. After his death, George's spirit remained bound to the earth, and was later captured by Cyrus Kritikos to become the hammer. When Dennis and Maggie pass through the containment cube of the hammer, it strikes the glass with its hammer, frightening Dennis. The Hammer is the 10th ghost that is released and pursues Arthur and Kalina through the basement, but the two narrowly escape him into the house. Later, the Hammer attacks Dennis and Arthur in the basement. Dennis traps Arthur behind a glass, while distracting the Hammer until the Annihilator arrives. The Hammer is able to knock Dennis to the ground before the Annihilator finishes him off. The Jackal. The Jackal is the ghost of Ryan Coon and the 11th ghost to appear in the Black Zodiac. Born to a prostitute, Ryan Coon was born at some point in 1887. Ryan grew to develop a sick, insatiable, and uncontrollable taste for women. As a result, he became a wild and cunning sexual predator, attacking, abusing, and killing homeless and prostitute women in the darkness of the night like a wild animal. Ryan sought treatment and committed himself to the Bournewood Asylum, where he eventually went insane. He clawed at the walls of his cell with such violence that he tore off his nails completely, making his hands look like claws. When Ryan attacked a nurse, the doctors decided to put him in a straitjacket and tighten it every time Ryan behaved badly, contorting his limbs horribly. However, Ryan managed to bite through his straitjacket and escape, so the doctors locked his head in a cage-like helmet and locked him in a dark cell in the basement, where he came to hate any human contact and would shrink in fear and scream wildly whenever anyone approached him. One day, a fire broke out in the asylum, and while everyone else escaped, Ryan chose to stay behind and fulfill his deserved fate, apparently dying in the fire. After his death, Ryan's spirit remained bound to the earth, and was later captured by Cyrus Criticus to become the jackal. He eventually comes across Kathy and brutally abuses her, scratching her. But he is forced to release her when Kalina arrives and throws a flare at him. The jackal chases after Kathy, Kalina, and Arthur, but is separated from them by a sliding glass door, and barrier spells prevent him from crossing. Later, the jackal reunites with the group in the house and attacks Arthur, brutally scratching his back until Kalina uses another flare to drive the jackal away. The Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is the ghost of Horace Mahoney, also known as the Breaker, and is the 12th ghost to appear in the Black Zodiac. Abandoned by his mother soon after birth, Horace was raised by his father and worked in his father's junkyard, cutting and crushing old cars. When his father died, Horace went insane and became a serial killer, picking up hitchhikers and stranded motorists to take them to his junkyard where he would kill them with his bare hands and feed their remains to his dogs. This earned him the nickname, the Breaker. After being arrested, Horace killed 3 police officers before being shot and killed by a SWAT team. His ghost remained tied to the junkyard and continued to kill anyone who entered, leading to a total of over 40 deaths by 2001. Cyrus Criticus and his team, including Dennis, arrived at the junkyard in 2001 to capture Horace's ghost and turn him into the Juggernaut. They used a Latin chant recorded on tape played through a megaphone to successfully lure the Juggernaut into a containment cube, but not before it brutally killed most of Cyrus' team. The Juggernaut was then transferred to the basement of the Basilius machine with the other 11 ghosts and was the 12th and final ghost to be released, joining the Hammer in attacking Dennis and brutally breaking his back with a pole. The Broken Heart. Arthur Criticus, also known as the Broken Heart, was destined to be the 13th ghost of the Black Zodiac. Tragically, Arthur's life was forever changed when his beloved wife Jean was horribly burned in a Christmas tree fire and passed away in the hospital. Devastated, Arthur and his family were forced to move into a cramped apartment and hire a nanny, Maggie Bess, for their children Bobby and Kathy. This spirit that Arthur never became was the final ingredient in the spell to fully activate the Basilius machine, as it required a sacrifice of pure love rather than misery, hatred, vanity, or anger.
If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to comment and give me your ideas about topics for new videos. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.